Let's look at the Strait of Hormuz. Here are the United Arab Emirates, here we have Oman, and on the other side is Iran. Now on this map here, what you see, all these red dots, there are between 16 and 32 ports that the Iranians operate, either here in the Persian Gulf or here in the Gulf of Oman. And these would be some of the ports that the Cairo, the Navy, would try to block in this blockade, right? Trying to force Iran's hand, we showed you this yesterday. Going back to this point, with the yellow marker, I can show what the Iranians intend and how normal trade has been. This shipping route passes through Oman, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran just ahead. And that's what the Iranians want around this island here, right? It's called Larak, and that's what the Iranians would like to happen. However, that's what we see now. Bottleneck here in the Strait of Hormuz. There's an air and a few ships passing through there. What we're trying to show here are 4 vessels connected to China. Some are carrying oil, others are not. There are 4 different models here. With the blockade in place, they were heading to Larak Island, but they turned back. The same thing happened with these 2 here, but there was a report during the night. Lauren Simonetti from Fox Business talked about it. This is the route of Rich Starry, right? You see it in yellow. She passed through here, stopped, and at night crossed the Strait of Hormuz. That's one while the blockade continues. Look at the maritime traffic we're observing. Do you see the red and green dots? On the screen behind me, here's Oman. Here are the United Arab Emirates, and up there is Iran. That's the island I mentioned at the top of the screen. Everything you see in red is an ocean vessel transporting oil or petroleum derivatives. Everything in green is cargo, but you can see the congestion here on the coast of the United Arab Emirates and also here on the coast of Oman. They've been sitting there for several weeks now. Now, if the Zilwa Navy were to intercept a ship at sea, basically this is what happens. These are the rules of the sea now. You issue the warning, the ship is boarded, and the documents are checked. If they pass, everything is fine. If they don't, we could have problems. The ship can then be boarded. It is boarded and searched. And finally, it is detained, redirected, or eventually released. These are the current maritime laws for the Zilwa Navy. Kirk Lippold, former commander of the USS Paul, is with us now. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you here. What are we missing in this story? What do we still need to understand?
I think the big picture, Bill, that you need to consider is the Navy establishing a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz and at Iran's ports. It's a very complicated operation. It takes a lot of ships to carry it out. There's a lot of land, a lot of territory to cover. And if we have the necessary forces, in case you decide, as you mentioned regarding the law of the sea, that we will need to stop and inspect those ships, sending in a team prepared for any situation, since we don't trust them, especially those that are Iranian.
Can I ask about all those ships out there for weeks? Like, I have a silly question, but how do they have supplies to deal with all that?
Well, Dana, great question, because many have few supplies and the sailors are very worried about keeping themselves supplied. The ship owners are now questioning how we're going to get food and maintain all these vessels that are stopped, waiting both in the Persian Gulf and in the Gulf of Oman. So I think the Navy is paying attention to that. They work with partners in Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates to ensure that these ships receive the necessary support and that these sailors from all these different countries are assisted. But in the end, we, the United States Navy, must hold Iran accountable for what it has done and bring them back to the negotiating table. Keep the pressure on them, because this will cost the Iranian regime $13 billion per month. To make sure we can maintain this blockade, they don't get the economic support, the support they need. Their economy was already staggering when all this started. So, although there is an impact with all these ships waiting, they need support, and the United States is working through diplomatic channels to make sure this happens.
I would agree with what I just quoted a moment ago when that official said that this blockade really scares Iran because it chokes their economy. I was talking to Brian a little while ago. This is a chess game and each player is making a move. Sometimes I think on a 24-hour basis. It's check, and that's what we're seeing. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely, Bill. Actually, I think the United States is thinking even further ahead than that. It's not just the immediate pressure now, but also what happens if the Iranians actually come to the negotiating table and agree to the four main points. No nuclear program or centrifuges, no support for proxies, opening the Strait of Hormuz, and continuing to support the main points that Trump established. I think that as we look at all of this, we're trying to anticipate how we're actually going to carry out these actions and make them happen. So, it's chess, but it's also a long-term game because in the end, the Iranian regime needs to be brought to its knees and realize that it can't be trusted. This is no longer a matter of trust but verify. It's about the fact that they lied, they hid information, and they've been killing for 47 years. Their actions will speak for themselves at the negotiating table.
It's also a risky game, and President Trump talked yesterday about other countries possibly helping.
Absolutely. Do you expect, Mr. President, that other countries will help in this effort to block Iran and these specific ones?
Yes, other countries will. Which countries? We don't really need other countries, frankly, but they have offered help. We'll leave it at that. We'll probably make it clear tomorrow.
So those are the countries that are helping, but what is your opinion about China specifically, and how might they be working with the Iranians behind the scenes?
Tana, we need to be very careful about two things with China. Primeiro, eles os apoiaram militarmente. The biggest ongoing threat is the fact that China has an incredible cyber warfare capability. Iran has it too. The fact that they share some of this capability is concerning. Lembre-se, sobre o Estreito de Hormuz is being treated as an international waterway with freedom of navigation. The same is happening with China in the South China Sea, where Iran has surrounded the Middle East with proxy groups. China, in violation of international law, has militarized. 9 and soon 10 with the Antelope Reef, 10 islands in the South China Sea capable of cutting off maritime traffic in the region. China is watching the actions of the United States and the world there.
4 weeks before a summit. Last point here. I don't know if you saw Jerry Baker in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. He wrote a hard-hitting editorial where he basically argued that this administration is improvising in this war. Do you agree with that? Or do you see more of a need for imagination depending on what your enemy, your adversary, does?
I absolutely disagree with that. I think they've had war plans ready for years, both at Central Command and with the commander of the Fifth Fleet. Eles estão exercitando isso. But like in any conflict, Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched. The reality is that we tried to get the Iranian regime to give up its nuclear program. In the end, they didn't do it and we're adjusting. Adjusting in the middle of a conflict is part of it. You need to be flexible to support ongoing operations, but also think strategically about the long-term and short-term impacts, as well as how we deal with the regime. Did they recognize the Strait
Of Hormuz from the beginning?
I believe there was an expectation that this wouldn't happen so quickly and that Iran wouldn't react like this, threatening with mines, fast boats, and other means. But we adapted very quickly and said, all right, if you want to play, we'll raise the stakes because we have military capability. The capability to shut everything down, strangle Iran's economy, and prevent them from resupplying and sustaining any of their forces. And in addition, make sure their economy pays a price.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you for serving in the ESCOL command. Yes, thank you. I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much.